I'm the global lead for safety assessment at Covance Labs, but I'm also on the board of directors for BioForward. I'm just thrilled to be here, to be introducing the next panel, but I really want to thank BioForward for putting on this summit. You know, this is a great opportunity for all of us within this industry, in this area, to get together and network and get to know one another. You know, we share a lot of things. There's a lot of things in common, including resources, talent, supplies, et cetera. And it's a great organization to be part of. I want to thank the panelists that you'll be meeting in just one moment. It's a group of really fabulous women, and they have a lot to offer, a lot of insights that I think will really resonate with this group. I've been in the sort of biohealth industry for about 28 years now, not always here at Covance, but 28 years total. In that time, I've had 15 bosses, and only one of them was a woman. So I think that the fact that we are actually entering into this discussion, trying to promote women in biohealth, women in leadership, women empowerment, really is going to help our industry as a whole. So on that note, I'd like to introduce the panel. We've got Rupa Pike, Marilyn France, Laura Hilty, and Tammy Turek-Etienne, who will be our moderator. So welcome to our panel on navigating the road to success, how diversifying and empowering women in biohealth builds a better leadership team. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Hello. Everybody can see, since I'm coming up behind Dr. Chris Mason, one of the challenges I have is that he was able to do 199 slides in 50 minutes. So here's my 199 questions in 50 minutes, so get prepared. I would like to actually just say thank you for everybody in the audience. I see a number of men, and I actually see a number of women, and that's phenomenal. I really appreciate having everybody here with this wonderful panelist that we have today to actually talk about empowering women in the biohealth industry. So please join me in welcoming. I'm not going to go through everybody's names again, because you actually just heard that from Lisa as well. But what I'd like to do is have each of the panelists, starting with Rupa, go ahead and talk to us about the company you're at, what are the products that you currently are offering, where you're located, and tell us about your team.
Sure. So first of all, I want to thank you, Tammy, and thank you, BioForward and Lisa, for inviting me to be part of this amazing panel. I currently work as the director of cell manufacturing for a brand new program that is co-owned by the university and the UW Hospital. It is called Program for Advanced Cell Therapy. I am in charge of the program and the daily operations. We are very unique compared to some of the other programs because we are based in the hospital, and we have a very clear mandate. We de-risk first in human clinical trials. So we basically manufacture a variety of cells that get either infused or injected in patients during clinical therapy. So we are clinician-driven. So all of our clinical trials are clinician-driven, and it's what's called point of care. So cells are manufactured within the hospital in our GMP labs and delivered to the nurse to be infused or injected in the patients. Since we just started, we're about a year old. I have cell manufacturing specialists on my team. We also have a quality control and quality assurance group that actually reports to the folks at the hospital. And we have a medical director, and our overarching director is Dr. Galpo, who's the Associate Dean for Therapeutics and Innovation.
Very good.
We're excited. It's a new program, and we're making good progress.
Excellent. We'll move on to Marilyn.
All right. Again, I'd like to thank you for being here today. It's a pleasure. I also enjoyed the speaker that was ahead of us, so truly an honor to be here. I work at AbbVie, you may or may not have heard of AbbVie. We're relatively new. We were one of the largest startups. We're in our 6th year now. We were spun off of Abbott Laboratories, which may be more familiar to you. I've been with the company 31 years, 25 at Abbott, and now we're in our 6th year with AbbVie. We're a biopharmaceutical company. We are just under 30,000 employees around the world. We have 14 manufacturing plants around the world, 7 research centers. And our products, we're very focused on immunology. Oncology is clearly a space that the industry is moving into quickly, which is good. And recently, women's health. So we're excited about our products. It's our goal to have a remarkable impact on our patients. Our patients are typically in a moderate to chronic care state with our products. So our work and our medicine is very important to us and our patients. So.
Very good. Excellent. How about you, Laura? Can you give us a little update on who you are?
Yeah, so I'm with Forte Research, which we provide specialized clinical research software and some services to help the entire clinical research process, mostly operations, some clinical data. We have, for the last 18 years, really focused on large academic centers and NCI-designated cancer centers to talk about oncology, and are just starting to work with pharma. We are located in West Madison and have the majority of our 250 people are in West Madison. We've got a small office in Bangalore, India. And I am on the product management side and really focusing on where we're going next across our various products.
Very good. And I am Tammy Turek-Etienne. I work at Exact Sciences. And as you all know, Exact Sciences is based here in Madison. We have over 8 different facilities here in the Madison area, as well as a couple sites elsewhere in the US. As we know, Cologuard, it is for early detection, and that is our focus and mission at Exact Sciences. Cologuard is a non-invasive cancer colorectal screening test that we utilize at Exact Sciences, and it's really, critical to us. It's a advanced stool DNA technology that looks for elevated levels of altered DNA or hemoglobin in abnormal cells that may be associated with cancer or precancer. And I oversee operations. We have about a little over 100 people in operations, and we have a number of different functional areas. So you go from supply chain to engineering to manufacturing, quality control, validation, EH&S, tech transfer, so you name it. We oversee a number of the areas, and Cologuard itself has about 300 different components or materials that are actually involved in actually making the kit that goes down to the lab from the patient, and those are all the assay reagents that we make at Exact Sciences. So with that, now that you know a little bit about all 4 of us as your panelists, we've actually broken up the 2018 Biohealth Summit into 3 sections. The first one will be focused on career and obstacles. The second will be on strong leaders and coaches. And then the last one will be on diversification at the leadership table. And I can't see everybody in the audience, but please, throughout this, we really want it to be interactive and engaged. So if anybody in the audience has a question throughout this, please raise your hand. Go ahead and speak up, because we do want this to be a conversation here and not be just us speaking and answering questions. So if you have something that you're wanting to bring to the table, please go ahead and raise that question up for us. So we'll start with the first session. The first one will be around career journey and obstacles along the way. So I'd like to ask Marilyn, can you tell us about your journey? Can you tell us about the support that you got from different individuals as you took on different roles? And then give us one major obstacle or opportunity that you faced as a strong woman in this industry.
Okay, great. So as I said, I've been in this industry for 31 years. I started in Madison with my degree. It's great to be back home. Still a Badger fan, always will be. I take that with me wherever I go. But I graduated from Madison and I started right away at Abbott. And I started as the lowest technician in manufacturing, entry grade technician, and over the 31 years, I've worked my way up to the Vice President of Quality Assurance. I will tell you that was never the plan, but what I have learned probably the most over the time is you just have to work harder than everybody else. And I haven't interviewed for a job for probably 20 years, because when you work really hard, opportunities will come your way. So I think that's one of the biggest things that I've learned. As far as obstacles go, there's always going to be obstacles along the way. Many of them are just the job changes in the workplace. Part of the evolution over time, I think, is very common. And you know, the thing that I found to be the most important is if you have ethics and integrity, it's just, you know, you have to have, it doesn't matter what job you do. And understanding why things are happening the way they are, why people are doing what they're doing it with intent. And it's not against you personally, it's not against the company, but I think it's very, very important to understand why decisions are being made like they are, and then you can learn from them so that in the future, you can take that with you and make very good decisions on your own.
Absolutely. That's a great point. Laura, do you want to give any examples around your journey and any obstacles that you had along the way?
Yeah, it's been kind of a similar journey. Started out in the lab as a lab tech, but through my journey at Forte, I started within project management, and it quickly turned into a special project that kind of birthed the product management function. So I think in a similar way, it was really looking at what the needs are in the company and really kind of moving towards that if there's skill sets that I can apply towards that. And you mentioned the support of the management team and kind of the support around you. And I think something that stands out is really them recognizing the strengths that I didn't even know that I had and kind of helping provide those opportunities and kind of get me towards those. In terms of obstacles, the thing that comes to mind is, especially within the biotech industry, there's a lot of changes, as you mentioned, acquisitions, and some of these large changes. One example, we had actually 2 or 3 years ago spun out a subsidiary company to really, focus on specific areas that we wanted to solve. In the process, so I was leading that kind of breakout of the subsidiary, and in that process we realized we lost some of the benefit of the Forte brand and some of the customer engagement from that. So we decided to reincorporate, back into the parent company. So leading that, both, getting people excited about this separate thing that we're going to go do, and then, leading them back into the change of direction was certainly a challenge. And I think some of that is what I've learned out of that is really looking at, transparency and also helping the rest of your team process. So kind of giving them the time and the reasons why, and helping them understand the decision-making process that they weren't privy to, that, in leadership you are privy to and have more of that leeway and runway. So
for sure, that's great. I actually have to agree that change management is so part of everyday life, and you have to really get comfortable knowing that something else is going to be happening, and always be prepared and be ready to accept it, accept the challenge, accept the changes, and be okay with it. So thank you both. That was very good. And what we'll do is we'll actually move into another question here and think about, how do we proceed going forward? So one of the things that I do want to make sure that we talk about and really help to understand is we've heard many women in the industry that have stated that they don't feel recognized, that they don't have the opportunities, maybe that leaders aren't seeing them be successful. Why do women always have to be the ones to actually speak up and tell what they're doing? Women often expect that their leaders should be seeing it. And so one of the ways that I'd like us to talk about this is to give some advice, Rupa, to women as they're moving into their careers. And what advice would you tell a woman as they're moving along, and with that concern of why aren't our leaders just seeing us being successful?
That's a good question. And unlike Marilyn, I am one of those people who has moved from job to job just because opportunities presented themselves, and worked in Madison, but also worked in other states as well. So I have a little bit of different experience, but fundamentally the issues are same, whether we work in Madison or California. And to answer your question, Tammy, is I feel like personally for me and some of my colleagues, we've discussed this many times in the past, is you have to be very strategic and systematic about approaching this issue and preparing to have a conversation. And Tammy and I are at Life Tech. We learn to do everything in threes. We always have 3 points. 1 is too little and 5 are too many to remember. So we stick with the rule of 3. So I have 3 things. The first one is, for me, I learned as I progressed is to not put any emotion in it, to not go and have a conversation with your supervisor or the leadership team with any emotion in it, or not to mention anybody else, but rather, make a case for the accomplishments that you have made. Numbers are always good. If you have made company any profit or you have brought in talent. So make a case and use facts and figures to make a case to say, perhaps this has gone unnoticed. I want to bring this to your notice. Talk about hard metrics, which are very easy to measure. Did you help in launch a new product, or did you increase revenue, whatever the case may be. But also talk about the soft metrics. Were you instrumental in retaining critical talent? Have you nurtured that in your team? Or have you had any good cross-team relationships that have helped other people? So basically to go in and to just state the facts very professionally and say, these are the reasons I'm wondering if there are any opportunities for me to get on a bigger leadership role or bigger responsibility. And the third thing is, because I worked in many different organizations, I felt like it was important to understand the culture of the organization, because that dictates a lot of things. Talk to women who are in leadership team in that organization and see how long it took them to take that position. You may be a trailblazer. You may be the first person seeking a very high leadership position. And how do you, present your case? So all of those things are important. And if you do your homework and prepare and then have a conversation, I think it goes easier. You feel like you've made your case. The receiving person doesn't have to deal with any emotions or awkwardness of, well, so-and-so got a promotion, why didn't I? So, be professional and be very factual. And I think for me and some of my colleagues, that has worked in the past.
That's great. I would like to add on to what Rupa said, because I do think it's really important to be authentic, to really be yourself. When you do have these situations where you do want to talk to leadership, be confident. Go in there and explain what you're seeing. Have your data. I'm a data-driven person working in operations. Come in, make sure and be very, express the ideas, provide clarity. And I think if you're confident in walking through giving details as to where do you want to go, what have you been seeing, and how do you get to the next stage, I think leaders do respect that. So come prepared, be confident, and remember that as you move in your career, the one thing is it's not just you, it's a team. At Exact Sciences and even at Life Tech, we've always heard it takes a village. It absolutely does. So acknowledge your team that's actually there. It's through your direction, it's through your leadership that you're all being successful. And your leaders will see that in you by you highlighting that and emphasizing that when you're having conversations. And they can just be walk-through conversations in the hall. They don't have to be sit-down meetings where you're having a conversation with your direct leader. It can be just in passing where you're highlighting the great work that's being done by your team. And those are ways to resonate, the value that you're bringing to the company.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to add another thing, too, that I agree with both of you completely. It's good to have those conversations ahead of time. If there is a position that you're interested in or a part of your career pathway you want to take, sooner you talk about that, the better it is.
Definitely.
And be sure to ask how you are perceived. and get feedback from, if you have a mentor, if there's leaders, if there's people that you really trust. Ask about you. Is there something I need to do different? Do I talk too much? Do I not talk enough? Am I not presenting facts? I agree with you. Emotion has to stay out of it. It's fact-based, but it's good to get that feedback and get it before that job comes open to make sure that people know what you want to do and you're getting the feedback so that you're ready for it and perceived to be ready for it.
That's great. On a similar vein, I was thinking very similar to that is sometimes those fact-based conversations are really good, but to get into those conversations is kind of tough. And I think both from celebrating something that has been accomplished as well as where you want to go, passion can be a really key part of that, of kind of walking in excited about what you just found that just happened, and that you want to share that excitement, and that I would love to do more of that. If there's opportunities, if there's a specific thing that's already available, then that's really clear cut. But even if there's not, most of my roles have been kind of created along the way, and I've been part of creating them. So I think sharing that passion right up front, I think is.
I think that's huge. In the end, many of the roles end up to be created roles that we end up defining and helping to build. And the opportunities to get in on the ground floor and build that infrastructure together, I think, is what all of us are excited about doing. And every one of us that's here in the audience also has those opportunities if you speak up. So those are great. Thank you. All right. If there's no questions in the audience, I'm looking to see if I see any. We'll move into the second round. So the second round is around strong leaders. Is there a question? Oh, I see some movement. That's awesome. Let's hold on.
Hard to see.
Tammy,
thanks a lot for all those great pointers. I just want to ask about whether in your upward movement towards leadership roles, sponsorship played a great role versus mentorship. So were there champions who championed on your behalf? How did you cultivate those relationships?
That's a good question. Actually, I did have a champion. And it ended up going and working for the champion who became a CEO of another company. I think the key is to make yourself valuable, to make yourself the person who's willing to be perceived as somebody who's passionate about their position, what they're doing, passionate about the vision of the organization, and somebody who becomes a person who is reliable and is always willing to go the extra mile. Also is willing to be flexible and adaptable, because organization goals change, especially companies. We've all worked for companies. It changes. And if you are that person who's just easily adaptable and you're like, okay, take it in stride, this project's gone, now we're doing this project, it's fine, get your team along with you. Somebody who becomes very valuable during that journey of whatever that journey is, creating a new product, or if you are perceived as somebody who's critical talent and valuable, you may not even need to go seek a champion. Somebody will champion on your behalf when the opportunity is there. And building trust. Those two, I feel, are very important.
That's great.
I would say, for me, I've used a lot of mentors. And it will sound strange, some good, some not so good. I think from when I look at my career, I've learned a lot more from the great leaders, but I've learned a lot from leaders that weren't so good, because I took time to figure out what they were doing wrong or what they could improve on. And I think it's good to do both of those. The champion for me kind of came later in my career, and it's exactly what you said. It was built on trust. And when you have a position open, you're looking for people that you can trust to tell you the good and the bad, or they trust you enough to say, we're heading this direction, but I have a concern. I'm thinking we may need to switch directions a little bit. So it's really important, I think, to surround yourself with people that can fill your weaknesses or your gaps, but that you can trust to tell you when something isn't going the way that you think it should be, and that's really important.
Great.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there's some great points there. I've never had an official champion or mentor there, but I think to Marilyn's point before of really asking for feedback has helped that journey of really helping, get people to be really honest. And, as long as you're being receptive and adaptive and really trying to work on those things, I think that really helps get people in your corner and really wanting to help you through that too.
That's great. That was a great question because it was a perfect segue into our second session, which is around strong leaders and actually around coaches and mentors. So I appreciate that. Thank you. As we said, that this summit is all about empowering women, and really every one of us has a very different, I think, background of what mentorship and coaching looks like to all of us. So what I'd like to do is just ask Rupa, can you tell us what mentorship means to you and how you've gone through that?
Yes. Again, a very good question, Tammy. I've had amazing mentors. So my story is a little bit different than all of you. I came from India here to go to school at a young age. I didn't have any family here. And, I went to school, I did my PhD, my postdoc, and then, didn't know if I would live here, but I married somebody who lives here, and so this became my home. I've had amazing mentors and people who have helped me along the way. And because I had no family infrastructure, I think that meant a lot to me to come all the way from India. I'm very grateful. I came here with 2 suitcases and a dream, and this country has given me above and beyond I would have ever imagined. So I'm very grateful. I had amazing mentors. I continue to do. I can't give my mentors anything because they don't need anything from me. So I just decided to do the age-old thing, which is pay it forward. And I learned from my mentors, and I try to invest. So if I'm choosing, or somebody comes to me and says, I would like for you to be my mentor, I really invest in that person. I don't take on a lot of people because I want to spend a lot of time with a few individuals. I invest in them. Like Marilyn said, I try to understand their strengths. I also try to understand what areas that they could work on. And when I talk to them about my journey or, what is required, success looks different to everybody. So I try to understand their short-term and long-term goals. And I am very realistic. I say, on a given day, you're going to do justice to your work or to your family. It's never going to be an equal amount of justice. So you have to be prepared. Once you take a leadership role, there might be a meeting or a board meeting that you have to present at, and you are going to miss your child's recital. Those are things that a lot of young people don't think about. They just think, I want to be in leadership positions. So what I have done is I have tried to set their expectations in a realistic manner. It's like, go for it. But, when you get there, these are the things. So prepare for them ahead of time. And I also, tell them, these are some of the obstacles that you will face. You maybe think ahead as to what route you want to take. And I help them define what success looks for them, because what's important to me in my career may not be important to that person. So I really try to invest. And my goal is at the end to empower them and to give them tools in their toolbox for them to define what their success journey looks like.
That's good. I would actually resonate off of that. I've had mentors, and I would say mentorship to me is not around having set up one-on-ones and having routine discussion meetings. To me, mentorship is every day. I've had mentors back from when I went off from finishing my BS degree and went and did a stint at 3M for a summer before I went to grad school. And I still keep in touch with the person that I worked for then. And then after grad school, I ended up doing a little stop at Merck before I went and got my first job after getting my PhD. And I still keep in touch with the people that I worked for at Merck. So it's all about putting those connections together and continuing to build those relationships with those people that have been in our lives and helping us grow in our careers. I would also say, and I think Marilyn touched on this too, that you look at what leaders do that are really well, and you put those in your back pocket, and you also observe when there's situations where you're like, ooh, that is not something that I want to do, or that's not something that I would approach in that way, I put those in the back of my pocket as well to remind myself of who I am and how I want to be portrayed. And again, I go back to authentic is the key word for me. I am who I am. I can't change who I am, but I will be honest, I will be direct, and I will always have my door open for anybody that wants to come in and have a conversation with me and to talk about their career. Where do they want to go? What is their passion? And really seek to understand what interests them. And as women in this leadership type role, it really is about giving back. It is about paying forward. It's about taking the experiences we've had and really seeking to know what those next individuals are really interested in and getting to the heart of that, and then helping find ways to help them move in those careers. Because not everybody is going to be interested in the same direction that I took my career. But if I can ask them specific questions about where they're interested in going, and I know where our company is going, I can put those pieces together and identify opportunities for individuals to continue to grow their career and have a chance to help them navigate into different roles that they might not even realize exist, or roles that we build with them because we understand what they're interested in. So I really appreciate you giving us that example. Let's go to another question here. Laura, can you talk about coaching other women in your role and how you've done that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is emulating what has worked in the past from those who have acted as mentors to me. I think most of the context is within my teams. I think one of the things is that we've already touched on a little bit is understanding their strengths and putting them in the best positions, and even calling those out and making that really clear what those strengths are so that they can continue to hone on those skills. I would say another important aspect is to get into coaching mentality rather than problem-solving mentality. So a lot of times, especially team members come to you, and ask questions, and I think this is particularly, women are good at asking questions, so it's easy to get into problem-solving mode and say, yep, these are what we should do, and just send people on their way. But I think a really important aspect of coaching is pausing and really understanding, especially for those that tend to be a little bit more shy or reserved, to basically put the question back on them of what do you think, what would you recommend, and why, and giving them time to process through that or gather the data that they would need to make that recommendation, and help them process through that. I think doing that in front of groups can be really useful too, because then the rest of the teams that they are indirectly leading or can be influencing see that thought process, can either ask questions to clarify or follow them in their decisions. So finding those opportunities as well.
Great. Marilyn, do you have any other advice?
I think for me, in addition to what you've said, because I agree with all of it, but I also think as a coach, it's as important to listen as it is to speak. Body language, you can tell when people are uncomfortable, and the first rule of coaching is when the door's closed, tell me what's on your, just transparent, straightforward, tell me what's on your mind. If you need to talk about a situation specifically because you can't get through it, say it. It's confidential. Nothing ever leaves that room, so that we can really get to the heart of it. But I find listening and really, like you said, understanding what their journey is and what they're trying to solve, if it's a problem or if something's not working out and they don't know why, and then really trying to help them understand maybe the different point of view. I always tell people, know your audience.
That's great.
What do they want to hear, and are you presenting it in the right way? Maybe it's something as simple as that on the delivery. So those are the couple of things that I think are really helpful.
I actually love that. I start my one-on-ones with that exact question of what's on your mind, because it's broad enough that they can really get anything out, and let them talk.
I think you also hit upon the point of trust again, because you said shutting the door.
Yep.
Being able to talk about what are those concerns and being able to understand that this is a trusting environment, so you're building that relationship with people that they know they can come to you, and that when you say that this is confidential, it is kept confidential. And I think that's one thing that we in our roles need to make sure and always emphasize, is that when people are coming in to want to talk to us, when it is in that confidence environment, that it is only between you and that individual that you guys are working through, moving things forward. One last question, and then we'll see if there's any questions from the audience. Rupa, can you talk about strong leaders that did well guiding you, and anyone that, from an example of what are the things that strong leaders maybe aren't the things that you want to be following and actually
it comes
going
back to
with.
what Marilyn said, right? I have been very fortunate. The mentors and the leaders that I have had interactions with, I think that there were things I admired about them, and they were very effective, very passionate. They understood the vision of the organization. They relayed the vision very clearly to their team, which then allowed me to relay the vision to my team, and approachable as well. They understood the importance of bringing everybody together to get the task at hand done. I also believe that there are very, very strong individual contributors and very, very strong people leaders. And sometimes the individual contributors are not necessarily good people leaders. People leaders' skills are very different. So I was in a position where there was somebody that was my direct supervisor who wasn't a people leader, but it didn't affect us very much because the organization realized that this person wasn't, while this person was a strong contributor, individually wasn't a people leader, and so then things were changed. So it wasn't anything terrible, but that was a lesson learned too for me. Is like, when you're thinking about yourself or folks you're trying to help, those things need to be taken into consideration. Somebody can be amazing, but maybe not an amazing people leader.
Absolutely. Are there any questions out there in the audience before we move on?
Hard to see, right, with the lights on.
All right. Oh, I do see one in the back corner over here.
Hi. I love this discussion about coaching, and I'm just wondering, what I've felt is that there are sometimes some really valuable things you can learn from men as your coaches and mentors versus women. And I'm just wondering if you've seen differences throughout your career in the insights that you might get from the different gender.
That's a good question. How do I put this? I think what I have learned from mentors and leaders that I had interactions with that were men is to use fewer words and to be very objective about what you're communicating. And to not bring emotion into anything. When I was young, I think, when I look back, I think that I always came from a mode of reaction. You react to something. What I learned from both men and women, women who are effective leaders, is to not react, to just digest the information, not have any emotion. Maybe you go process the information and then figure out what needs to be done. But I do believe that I learned to be objective from the mentors who were men, and to really, make my point in fewer words. I had amazing women mentors, but in my situation, most of the leadership team I reported to were men. So, but my PhD mentor is a woman and learned a lot of things. I'm indebted to her for a lifetime for that.
That's a great question. I would resonate off of what Rupa said. I've actually had numerous male counterparts that I've worked for, and I've had the fortune of having a few women that I've worked under as well. And every one of them brings different perspective to me. But the one thing that I've gathered is they all listen. And when I come to talk, we're having a conversation. They're listening to what I'm saying. They're not over on their texting because their iPhone just went off and it went off and it went off and it went off. It's actually flipped over, it's shut down, and we're actually having a conversation together to figure out what direction are we moving. They're interested. They want to hear what's going on. So I've seen that in both sides. I do think that women, we are very much about let's move on, and I'm a very direct person and a very candid person. But I think people do know that when they come in to actually work with me, or even the people that I've had the fortune of working for, it's let's talk through it, let's get a game plan, let's work together to solve a problem, because it's not just one or the other. And I've had the fortune of having that with most of the leaders that I worked for. So great question.
Quick question.
Yes.
Can anyone hear me? I'm in the back.
Okay.
Waving my hand.
Oh, there you are.
You've given some great advice to women on interacting with men. Do you have any advice for men on how to interact with women to help empower them?
That's a great question.
I guess I would say it's not different to me, and I don't want it to be about men versus women. And so, for me, I would think the best advice is no matter who's in front of you, treat them with respect. Listen. It's a lot of the things that we've talked about, but treat them like an equal. And I think the more that you can do that with anybody, it doesn't matter who they are, the more that they're going to come to you for more coaching and more advice, because they're earning trust. But I would say, listen, but make it equal and not make it about anything else.
That's a good point.
I would agree. I think one of the keys to listening to is understanding how you typically listen. So sometimes, men can tend to make more authoritative statements and be a little bit more clear, kind of use their words a little bit more to relay something, whereas women may not spend as long advocating for something. So just kind of recognizing if you're tending towards the loudest voice versus if you're really truly listening to the content of what's being said. But I agree. I don't think that it should be an entirely different approach by any means.
I would absolutely agree. Like I said, all the individuals that I worked for, they're listening. They're putting down and stopping something else that might be happening, which might be critical that they're needing to deal with, but they actually stop and they're taking the time to truly listen and have a deep conversation. So I would say that for men and for women, that's one of the key things that we're all talking about here is really taking the time to seek to understand what is going on and give us your guidance and your input, and vice versa. That's what we as coaches and as women in our roles and men in your roles need to consider, is taking a step back and really getting involved in the moment and taking that moment versus thinking about the 50 other things that you have that people notice. They notice that you're not engaged and that you're checked out. Okay. So take that time and really make it be about you and that other person having that conversation.
And thank you for that question.
Yeah, it was a good question. And if you can't take the time, tell them. I think it's important that if I got 50 things going on in my head and somebody says I need to talk and I can't focus, then tell them, give me 10 minutes. I need to decompress for a minute.
That's great.
I need to be with you now. I need to hear you. So if you can't, tell them and wait till you can dedicate your time to them.
I also think that, if leaders started very intentionally thinking about this is a man and this is a woman, that could basically be the dominant thought in their mind. So it might bring some awkwardness or some artificiality in the conversation. So I understand where Marilyn's coming from, is just somebody's in your office for whatever reason to give you a report or to talk. It's an individual. It's a valuable member of your team rather than being a man or a woman.
Excellent. All right, let's move into the last section, which is, is there another question?
Here.
Go ahead, please.
You've mentioned a lot of being objective and being very emotionless when you approach your mentors and stuff, but I see passion as a very important part of someone's character, and I really think that passion is a very important thing when you're addressing someone. So how do you balance being passionate about what you're doing, but also approaching the situation from an objective manner?
That's a good question. I took a class several years ago. There's a very big difference between passion and emotion.
Very big.
Passion is you are expressing something it's more tangible. It's like you're passionate about this particular project, or you're passionate about this new venture that your company is going into. So it is a reaction to something that is tangible, that's either presented to you or going to be presented to you. So you're expressing those feelings. Emotions are something that you are bringing to the table based on your past experiences, your personality. So when people see passion, they understand that. Like, oh, this person's very passionate about it. But emotion is, well, this, I should have been given this opportunity. Those are so when your body language is different, your tone of voice is different, and what you're actually saying is very different. So people recognize passion and appreciate passion. But when you bring emotion into it, it's like a completely different beast.
I would agree. I would have started that the exact same way. They're two very different things. Passion to me is something we share. I love my company. I love my job. And when you walk in a room believing that you know you're going to make a difference in somebody's life today, that is electric, and people will grab onto that with you. For me, emotion is personal, and there's a big difference. The emotion becomes about me and how I feel and what I think, and it's not about me. It's about what we can do and accomplish together. So to me, there's a big difference between it.
Yeah, I think that's a really great distinction. I almost feel like the emotion, what we mean by emotions is more of you're in less control, and it's about you, and it's
how you're feeling.
Or
not feeling.
And not to say that I have not gotten emotional in meetings, and I definitely have. So, but it's just much more effective when you're really thinking about the proactive passion on what you're moving towards.
Excellent.
I think people don't know how to respond to emotion, but everybody, because passion is infectious, everybody can respond and be on the same page with passion.
Yep.
Nice, very good. I think they all answered that very well. So we'll end with the last session here, which is around.
Oh, it looks like.
Is there another one?
Yep.
Well, let's go for one more, and then we'll go into that last round. Go ahead, please.
This might be a little bit of a downer, but how do you, really get to the point where you recognize that this isn't the opportunity for me? This company isn't going in the direction that I can go along with, that this team is so dysfunctional I don't quite understand how I can make a contribution or how I can really develop my, how do you make the decision that, it's time for me to move somewhere else? Like, this is just not the spot. And no matter how proactive I am about myself and how many skills I develop for managing things, this just isn't going to be the spot for me.
So I would tell you live with no regrets. My dad told me that a long time ago, and I think it's spot on. If you're not treated like an equal, you're not heard, you're not getting where you need to be, I am not afraid to change anything. It takes a lot of courage, and I think you really have to, if there's somebody either at work or in your life that, as a friend, your partner, that you can sit down and really talk it through, do your sanity check, do a little bit of reflection to make sure that your emotion hasn't taken over, because it's hard in those situations to not get emotional because you do believe in what you are trying to accomplish, and if you're not getting there, you have to make sure that you've really thought it through, talked it through, and then go.
I always say it's okay, I tell my team, it's okay to have a bad day.
Yep.
It's okay to have a bad week. But if you're having a bad month, it's time to stop and think as to why you're having a bad month. And maybe it's time to make a change.
Yep.
Life is too short.
It is way too short.
That's good. All right, let's move into that last topic, which is about diversification at the table. And what I really want to get to here is understanding companies, either your current company or even past companies. Why have those companies helped support moving us as leaders and as individuals into these leadership roles? What have those companies been doing right? So Marilyn, can you talk about that?
I think a lot of it is about the culture of the company, and I believe in a few things very strongly with the culture of a company. It's not up to my CEO to determine that, it's up to me. We talk a lot at AbbVie about the shadow of a leader. Everybody's a leader, and we talk about what kind of shadow, when people are looking at you and asking questions, how did you get to your job, how did you get to your role, what do you leave behind? And I had an example years ago where I was walking down the hallway. I was in quality assurance, and we had an ongoing inspection. And I walked down the hallway with my head down, and everybody thought the inspection was going very badly. It had nothing to do with any of that, actually. But I learned early how you carry yourself and what your shadow looks like is very, very important. And I think we are all individually accountable for the culture that we have. We have to foster that. We have to talk about it. We do a lot of surveys on the culture to make sure every single voice is heard. We talk to all of our employees about it. We do that repeatedly. So I believe firmly that my actions will foster good actions, and everybody has to be personally accountable for that in a company.
I absolutely agree, Ed. It's a part of our life and our culture. Culture is everything at Exact Sciences. If you walk around every one of our buildings, it says, how are you going to lead? And every one of us has opportunities to lead. So we go down the exact same conversations of, it's not just leaders that are at the table, that are at the board or at the executive level. It's ingrained into our culture, and it's up to all of us to help bring that to everybody. So we have conversations around, how are you going to lead? How are you going to help drive us going forward? What are you bringing to the table? And it's through, I agree wholeheartedly, it's ingrained into all of us to think about the culture. It's not just the top, it's all of us. And as all of us do that successfully, I do think it brings all of us to the table. And I do think that all of us have a voice, and our voices can be heard. We might not necessarily be the executive at the table, but through our voices and our conversations with our leaders, those voices are getting there, and that's how you continue to move yourself in your career going forward. So I do think it's a great one. It's not just the executive, it's not just the board, it's all of us together that I think it really helps drive it. Let's talk on one other critical topic that I know that we've heard about in the past, where we've heard that when women are direct, when women talk about career, when women talk about policies, we are considered aggressive, we're considered pushy. However, we've also heard that men in those same situations are termed strong or are termed confident. And I just would really like to have a conversation around this one and understand, are you seeing that in your area of work? If you have seen it, how do you help change that dynamic? How do we change that mentality that women are aggressive or pushy, whereas men doing the exact same thing would be considered strong and confident and moving forward? Any thoughts on that one?
I think the power of persuasion is a very powerful tool. And rather than, and the words you use, and like what Marilyn said, the body language that you emulate when you're talking to anybody, if you go in with a plan, if you show passion, if you show that, hey, you really, you're here, you're excited, you believe in, this, what is going on, you want to be a part of something bigger than yourself, and you're getting that. Sure. I think if you use those strategies and have a conversation from that perspective, rather than, well, I'm a woman, and therefore, I'm entitled to this or that. And also, on that note, your accomplishments should speak for themselves. I don't think that that anybody has an agenda as to, oh, we just want men to speak up or women not to speak up. I don't think there is anything personal, or again, coming back, it's not an emotional issue. Where is the organization going? How are you contributing to the organization's success? You contribute to your team's success, then you contribute to the organization's success. So if you approach it objectively and you make a case, you will not be perceived as an aggressive person because you are speaking to the facts. They can see your passion, they can see what you've done. Your work speaks for itself. So if that approach is taken rather than, I'm entitled to this or I'm not being given this because I'm a woman, like not make that distinction or not bring it to their notice because they're not working from that perspective. I don't think most supervisors, everybody I've had, I've never felt that from anybody. So rather, let your work speak for itself rather than your gender is what I always think.
Yeah, and I've been fortunate to not have this be a widespread issue where I've been. However, I do think that there are some differences, and just in reflecting back on it, I think that it's important anytime you get into a challenging or direct conversation that the other person knows that you're starting from the same page, you're on the same side, you're going towards the same goals, and I think that for men to do that with each other, there's already some level of, familiarity or something. They can walk into a man's office, hey man, and the walls are immediately down. And for a woman walking into a man's office, it's just a little bit different. So I've noticed that I've just used more words for that and kind of been more intentional about building that and making sure that they know that we're aligned on something before we get into the more direct conversations. And I think I think that has helped. So I don't think that that's necessarily a big problem. It's just something that we have to think a little bit more about. And I think, in terms of, I completely agree that if you start the conversation with, here's what I want for my salary or for my career, that's really limiting for people wanting to help you, and it really is not about you. It's about you're at the company for the company's sake and really needing to add value to them. And so I think that there's opportunity for women to be a little bit more vocal, as we were talking about, in what their passions are, what their desires are, what the needs are, and kind of even more publicly sharing those needs and announcing that they're going to take ownership over that. I think that's something that that's an opportunity for women to do a little bit more of. But yeah,
Excellent.
I just think we shouldn't paint ourselves in a corner.
That's great. Let's look out to the audience because we're sort of wrapping up, and I see that there's a hand up over here in this area. This has been great. I appreciate everybody in the audience. This is a very engaged team.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm an engineer, and it's a very male-dominated field. And 20 years ago, we had a lot of discussions around the term work-life balance. I haven't heard that today, other than Rupa's one comment about the recital. And I'm actually glad, because in my experience, we were really talking more about how the women had to find that balance. And typically back then, the men really weren't struggling with that. Are you seeing now that the culture, maybe as a country, is shifting a little bit? I mean, is work-life balance still more of an issue for women than men, or are we making progress on that?
I mean, personally, I would say work-life balance is all about the individual. I'm in my role that I've been passionate about wanting to get into, and I have a family, and I can balance finding the time to do everything that I need to do because I think through what do I need to do to achieve the responsibilities that I have at the office. And while I am at home, I do have my phone by me. I'm on probably 24/7. But at the same time, when my child is at a fast pitch tournament, I am dedicated to the fast pitch tournament, and I am in as the parent having a great time watching my daughter excel at the things that she's passionate about. So I do think that it really comes down to every individual, and that it's not a woman thing. Exact Sciences absolutely supports us in our careers. We have a number of people in VP and senior VP roles that are women that bring that diversity to the table and that help drive that culture and that excitement of you can do both, and you can do both really well. This isn't a challenge on, oh, I have to stop because I have to be home. I am at home and I can manage both and I can juggle it, and I actually like doing that. I don't know what I would do if I wasn't turned on. I think I would actually be really bored, and I'd probably learn to talk really fast like Dr. Mason did, because I wouldn't know what to be doing with myself, because I am that type of person that has to be going. And so I like having 1,000 things that I'm juggling, and so I guess that's my personal side, but I don't see work-life balance being the topic. I see the topics around how do we continue to drive culture into our organization and empowering everybody in our organization. So.
I want to specifically address, I think the culture has shifted, for sure. And I think technology has made things very easy. You know, there are times when you may need to stay at home because you have a sick child, but you have a computer, you have a phone, you can be connected, you can have a teleconference. I have colleagues, Tammy knows, I have colleagues, we used to have colleagues all across the world in different time zones, and we still got projects done on time. So I think that, yes, the culture has shifted, the technology has made things easier, and again, like Tammy said, you can be by your child, but at the same time, send out emails. So I think work-life balance definition is very different today than it was a long time ago, and maybe it will change again, it will be completely different 10 years from now.
So I really hate to cut off this conversation, and it's obviously not complete, but we do have lunch waiting for us. So I would like to thank the panel. This has been a fabulous conversation.